We wanted to thank you again for taking the time to join us for our final Lunch and Learn webinar. If you have questions during the webinar, you can submit them in the chat below, which I'll get started shortly. At the bottom of the screen, there's a chat blurb. So if you click that, it'll open the chat and you can submit your questions there, and then we will answer the questions at the end of the presentation. Just to let you guys know, the webinar will be recorded. All the information provided in the videos by Parkinson Association of Alberta and the featured speaker are furnished strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only. The service is not intended to be diagnostic, prescriptive, or replace the relationship, advice, or care of your physician. And general questions about symptoms, treatment, and medication, complementary or alternative therapies, and current research will be fielded. We're happy to announce that our speaker today is occupational therapist Connie, who will be discussing, demonstrating adaptive and mobility aids. Connie Luu is a graduate from McGill University with a master's in science of occupational therapy. Prior to that, she completed her undergraduate degree in neuroscience at the University of Alberta, where she volunteered with the Brain Awareness Movement and completed a summer internship at Brain Care Canada. Her current role is to enable clients to participate in everyday activities that are important to them. She does this by helping them regain physical or cognitive skills and adapt to the limitations by modifying tasks or environments. Connie also facilitates life skills workshops, including memory and attention, fatigue management, and sleeping well. Connie has been Parkinson Association's resident occupational therapist for the past year. So we're happy to welcome you today, Connie, and I'll give it to you.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Emma, and thanks for having me here today. I'm just going to share my screen. Just give me 1 second. There we go. Can everyone see that okay? If you can just give me like a thumbs up or a wave if you can see my screen. Perfect. Thank you. So I'm excited to be here today to present on the many different adaptive aids that may be helpful for people living with Parkinson's. For those clients living in the Edmonton area, we actually have a drop-in session later this afternoon at the Buchanan Center from 1 till 3 p.m. if you'd like to come by and try out any of the adaptive aids that I'll be showing today, just to see if it's something that's going to be helpful for you before you make a purchase. So before we get into the adaptive aids, I want to start by speaking a little bit about just what occupational therapy is. So to begin to understand occupational therapy, or OT for short, I like to start with taking a look at the word occupation. So when you search up the word occupation in Google, this is often the first result that comes up, a job or profession. And that's probably what most people think of when they think of the word occupation. And you're not wrong, that is one occupation. But in occupational therapy, we actually define occupations as being much more broad than that. So it's anything that you need to, want to, or are expected to do. So in the definition from the World Federation of Occupational Therapists, it reads, in occupational therapy, occupations refer to the everyday activities that people do as individuals, in families, and with communities to occupy time and bring meaning and purpose to life. So it can help to think of occupations in terms of 3 general categories. There's self-care, productivity, and leisure. So under self-care, these are the things that we do on a daily basis to take care of ourselves or others. They include feeding, personal hygiene tasks like brushing your teeth, shaving, doing your hair, getting dressed, showering, toileting, sleep. Medication management is a big one for Parkinson's, remembering when to take your medications, when to refill them, which ones to take, as well as looking at transportation. Under productivity, these include things like meal planning and preparation, any type of household management tasks like laundry, dishes. With spring coming up, maybe you have some yard work you need to get done to get your garden ready. We also look at financial management and budgeting, as well as volunteering, school, and work. And then lastly, under leisure, that's anything that you enjoy doing. It could be art, perhaps you like reading, music, that could be singing or playing instruments, sports. As well as outings like going to the movie or to a restaurant or traveling. These would all be considered examples of leisure activities. So many occupations can be impacted by the physical, cognitive, and motor symptoms of Parkinson's. So for example, some things might become more difficult. One that comes up quite often is difficulty falling and staying asleep, which in turn impacts our ability to do everything else in the day. Some things might become more frustrating. So perhaps you're still reading, but you get frustrated reading. Perhaps the words are blurry. It gets hard to pay attention or maybe remembering later on what it is that you've read. Some tasks might take longer than it used to. For example, getting dressed, especially if it's something with buttons or zippers, will often take a lot longer than it used to if you're having any difficulty with fine motor abilities or tremors. And then other tasks might take more energy than they used to. And a common one that comes up here is cooking, as well as the whole process of cooking, of figuring out what you're going to make, getting the ingredients for it, cooking the meal itself, and the cleanup afterwards. All of that can be really taxing. And lastly, there may be things that you used to do, but have maybe felt like you had to stop doing. For example, playing the piano. Again, if there's any difficulty with fine motor abilities, tremor, also vision, that can all impact our ability to do something like playing the piano or guitar or other leisure activities. So all of these things that I've circled here in red, and whatever you personally find takes longer, more difficult, draining, or frustrating, these are all things that an occupational therapist can help you with. So a few more important things to understand about OT. It's both an art and a science. We're client-centered, meaning we respect and draw upon client expertise, values, and lived experiences. So it's a collaborative process. It's not like you come and tell us what's wrong and we can prescribe you something to fix it. It's a lot of working together and trial and error to try to figure out ways to get you to be able to do that occupation that's important to you. It's evidence-based and research-backed. We're holistic, so we look at not only the physical aspect of things, but sometimes there's also cognitive or emotional or environmental barriers that can make it hard to do a particular activity. And lastly, it's about what matters to you. So on the right side of the slide, there's a picture of a door and a quote by an OT, Katie Marie, that I'm going to read out. So it says, "When people ask me what OT is and what I do, I tell them this. Picture a wall in front of you, as far to the left, as far to the right, and as far high as you can see. In that wall, there is a door, and that door is locked. On the other side of that door is what makes your heart happy. Playing with your kids, sewing, taking your dog for a walk, taking care of yourself without any help. It could be anything that makes a bad day not so bad anymore. That's your occupation." So some people are born lucky and they have their key. They can walk through the door their whole life without a problem. Other people aren't as fortunate. They've either lost their key or never had it begin with. And it's our job as occupational therapists to get them through that door. And if we can't, we bust a hole and make a new one. So what I really like about that door analogy is how it explains how OTs intervene in many different ways, given that client, their diagnosis, and what kind of environment or situation they're in. It's not always straightforward, but it's our job to be creative and think outside the box to work with you to find ways to get through that door, however that may look like. So that brings us to the focus of our talk today, which is one of the ways that OTs help people find a way to break through that door is by using adaptive aids. So adaptive aids are any tool or gadget that is used to help perform activities of daily living and promote independence. They can be low or high tech, as simple as something like a rubber band, to a more complex like technology or app or something to help you do a specific activity. There's sometimes resistance to using adaptive aids out of fear that it might cause dependence, or that if you use a tool to help you do something that you won't be able to do that anymore. But that's absolutely not true. When you start using an adaptive aid, it doesn't mean that you can't do that activity before and that you always have to do that aid, but there may be times when it's helpful to use the aid and other times when you can do the activity on your own. So an example would be dressing. If you're in a rush to get somewhere, it would be really helpful to have a tool to help you to get dressed. But maybe if you don't have to go anywhere that day, you have the extra time, then still practicing putting on your clothes, doing the buttons and everything on your own. You don't have to use the adaptive aid all the time, just when you feel like you need it and it's going to be helpful for you. So in terms of where to get some of these adaptive aids we'll talk about today, firstly, checking in any type of medical supply store. So the same places that you get your walkers or grab bars and things like that from. That's going to be different depending on which area of the province you're in. But if you have any difficulty finding a store in your area, you can always contact the Parkinson Association and speak with a client service coordinator to help you get connected to some stores in your area. A lot of the things we'll talk about are also available online. So you can often find them on Amazon, Performance Health, or other stores like that. There's also several items I'll mention today that I put in brackets on the slide, Makers Making Change. So this is a nonprofit organization that designs and 3D prints assistive aids to keep them affordable. So any of the things that I mentioned that say Makers Making Change on them, if you feel like that's something that will be beneficial for you, you can go on their website, makersmakingchange.com, and request to be connected with a volunteer in your area to 3D print that device for you. And they just charge for cost of materials and shipping if it's needed. So generally quite low cost. And then the last one I'll mention is the Tetra Society, which is another nonprofit. So if there's something that you're having trouble doing, and we don't talk about any adaptive aids that can help with it, you're not finding anything online that's serving the need that you are looking for, you can reach out to the Tetra Society. So they have volunteers who are designers, engineers, people who are good at building and inventing things, and you can describe to them what it is that you're having difficulty with, and they'll work with you to try to build a custom solution for you. All right, so with that, we're going to get into the adaptive aids. So I've broken them down into different categories. I do have some of the items here with me as well that I'll show you. So the first category we're going to take a look at is personal hygiene. So starting off with one of the first things we usually do in the morning, which is brushing our teeth. In order to make your toothbrush easier to hold, putting a foam grip or universal cuff, like shown on the picture here, can be really helpful, just to get a better grip. And if you loosen it, that it's not just going to fall out of your hand. Some people also find different types of toothbrushes can be helpful. So some examples are a 3-sided toothbrush, so you're not having to use as much like effort or strength to reach the different areas of your teeth. Perhaps something with a smaller angled head, or one that a lot of clients have mentioned is really helpful is switching to an electric toothbrush. And there are lots of models of them out there nowadays, and they are quite affordable now. Another challenge with brushing our teeth is sometimes getting the toothpaste out of the tube, especially when you're coming to the end of it. So this at the top here is a toothpaste squeezer. This is from Makers Making Change. So it's just a square and it has a slit in it that you slide onto your toothpaste, and it just helps to push the toothpaste to the front. Another device that can be helpful with that is a toothpaste dispenser. So these you can get like on Amazon or other similar stores, and it just mounts to the wall, and then it senses when you put your toothbrush in and dispenses toothpaste onto it. Another related activity to brushing your teeth is flossing. Floss is very thin and hard to grab a hold of. So using a handheld flosser such as these, or switching to a water pick is another way of making sure you can still keep your teeth clean even when it gets harder to manage floss. Great. The next one is skincare, or just any types of bottles, soaps, products, or things you might need to handle for personal hygiene. Makers Making Change has a tube opener that can accommodate a variety of diameters of lids. Just gives you a better grip. So instead of pinching onto the lid, you have almost like a lever type of handle, or switching your products to a different type of bottle. So generally a pump bottle is going to be easier than something that you need to squeeze, or an automatic dispenser. The next thing I'll mention is shaving. So similar to with a toothbrush, considering switching to an electric razor is one way that you can really save energy, as well as thinking about the positioning. So using a footstool, or if you have like a shower chair or something in your bathroom, just something to prop up your foot on so that it's easier to reach your legs, and also helps to prevent falls as well. We don't want to be standing and shaving because that can be quite risky. Another tool is a razor extension handle. So this is just a long handle, and it has a place at the end to secure your razor on, so that you can reach your legs or arm, back, or anything else that's difficult to reach. And the next thing is clipping your nails. So the first thing I'll often recommend is just trying to adapt your existing nail clipper. So that might mean wrapping something grippy along the handlebar. It could be medical tape or Coban tape, or even just getting a nail clipper that has a larger handle. You can usually find at like a regular drugstore in the makeup department. The next kind of level up from that is looking at nail clipper holders. So these two are from Makers Making Change. The first is a nail clipper holder. I don't know if you can still see me, but I'm holding one up here. And then your nail clipper just goes into this little hole here. And then instead of having to grip it with your other hand, you can use your whole hand to push down on it. So you can make a fist, or you can use your arm, or whatever grip is easier for you to do. The other option there is, they call it flipper to clipper. So this is a one-handed nail clipper. So I'm holding it up here in the video. So it just folds open, then you slide your nail clipper in, and then you place your finger by the nail clipper. And then when you press down, this part at the top here pushes on your nail clipper so that you can clip your nails one-handed. So that's a pretty nifty one that they just came out with recently. There's also different types of adaptive nail clippers you can purchase. So there's one-handed nail clippers. There's ones with swivel heads, so you can maybe hold it at an angle that's more comfortable for you. Or there's also electronic nail clippers like the Clip Different Pro, although these do get kind of progressively more expensive. So I would try some of the solutions on the previous slide first to see if that works for you before looking into some of these. Another part of personal hygiene is also putting on jewelry or makeup, one that we often forget about or stop doing because it just seems like something extra you maybe don't need to do, but can still be really important and just help you to feel comfortable and like yourself. So in terms of jewelry, adapting the clasp to a magnetic clasp can be one way to make them easier to put on. Or looking for things like clip-on earrings or with bracelets, ones that stretch or slide on rather than something that has a tricky clasp to open. And then with makeup, looking for makeup brushes and tools that are universally designed. So Guide Beauty was actually developed by someone with Parkinson's to be easier to grip, or looking at different means of applications that could be using brushes or sponges or fingers to apply your makeup instead of the regular makeup brushes. And then the last thing with personal hygiene is styling your hair. So Makers Making Change makes an assistive hair dryer handle. You can also purchase a hair dryer stand that you can mount your hair dryer on and then just sit underneath it, so you're not having to keep both of your hands up the whole time, which can be very tiring. Or looking at a hair dryer brush combo. So it dries your hair as you're brushing it, as opposed to having to hold the dryer and also a brush at the same time. So that wraps up our section on personal hygiene. Does anyone have any questions about any of those so far? I'm just going to check the chat quickly. Okay. If you think of anything throughout, we can answer all the questions at the end as well. Okay, but for now, we're going to switch gears over to looking at dressing. So the first tool for dressing is a dressing stick. And now this can be used in a lot of different ways. There's two different hooks at the top there. One way is how he's demonstrating in the picture there, is helping to get your shirt kind of over your shoulder, or it could also be using it the other way to get it off your shoulder. Some people will also use them to help bring their pants up. So if you're sitting and your pants are on the ground, you can hook it through a belt loop and use it to bring it up. And then on the bottom side, there's a little hook there, and that's for zippers. So you place the hook onto your zipper and then use it to pull up. The next tool is a button hook. So I have one with me here, right here, and I'm just going to demonstrate quickly for you. So how this works, here, I'll maybe bring it a bit closer up to the slide. So there's a handlebar and there's a little wire part. So you stick the wire through the buttonhole, and then you clasp onto the button on the other side, and then you just pull it through and take off the hook. So that can be useful for both buttons on your shirt as well as buttons on your pants. For men with dress shirts, you can try it on those buttons on the sleeve as well, but those are often quite tricky to do with this. And then the next one is a long-handled reacher. So this isn't really specific to dressing. It can be used in a lot of different situations to pick up things that have fallen on the floor or to reach things that are high up. In terms of dressing, it could be used to help reach your pants if you're sitting, or if you drop your socks or something on the ground, or even if you have clothes that have fallen, to help get them off the ground so you're not having to bend to pick those up. So lots of people like having a couple of these throughout their house, maybe one in the bedroom, one in the living room, perhaps one out in the yard if you're often picking things up there. Okay. And the next one is for zippers. So putting a zipper pull, or it could also be a keychain, a ribbon, anything that you have that's easy to grasp onto a zipper to make it easier to pull and get like a better grip on. Or there's also magnetic zippers as well. So I'm just going to play a short video here. Okay, so you'll see with the magnets, it just clasps on at the bottom, and then you just pull up. Yeah. So they sell zipper conversion kits that you can then put onto and replace your existing zippers with. Next, some different aids for socks. So the first one is a sock aid. So this is a piece of plastic, usually with 2 strings or ropes on them. So you bend the plastic, slide your sock onto it, and then you slip your foot in and you use the strings or the cords to pull it up onto your foot. Another product is called Socky Talkies. These are from a company called Beetlebug. They have these wire kind of loops on either side of the sock. Just again, same idea, just getting you a better grip. So we're not having to grip onto a side of socks. You could loop your fingers in through the hole and then be able to more easily pull up your sock that way. For those who use compression stockings, there's a couple of different devices that can help with putting those on. The first is a magnide. So it's a slippery piece of material with some magnets in it. So you put your compression stocking over the magnide and it helps it to get onto your leg with less friction. And then you just pull that strap there, and then with the magnets, it comes off. And then the same thing in reverse when you take it off. And the next one is a Dolphin Donner. It looks almost like a donut. So you either can use your arm, or they have a big cone that you can get with it, where you put the compression stocking on it and then you roll it onto that device, and then you roll it up your leg and it comes off as you're rolling it. Or the last one is a wire frame. So this one you would put the compression stocking kind of over where this plastic piece is, and you hold on to the handlebars and then stepping into the compression stocking. So there are, I know it's not kind of hard to envision how these work just seeing the picture. So I do encourage you, if you have trouble with compression stockings, to just jot down the names of these devices, and then you can just search them up on YouTube, and they have demonstration videos of how to use each of these devices. And last thing with dressing is shoes. The first one I'm sure many of you are aware of is a shoe horn, so just helping getting in the heel part of the shoe. Another great one is elastic laces. So these essentially turn any shoe into a slip-on shoe. You just put them on once. There's lots of different styles and colors that they come in. And then you can use the elastic laces in conjunction with the shoe horn. And then lastly, just looking at different types of slip-on shoes that are easier to get on and off, especially for shoes that you're wearing indoors, or if you're, say, in the middle of the night getting up to go to the bathroom. We want to make sure that whatever shoes you're using are easy to get on, but also still have a very good grip on them. Okay. So I'll just pause there for a sec and just check if there's any questions around any of the dressing aids. Nope, we're good so far. All right. So moving into our next topic, which is eating and drinking. So firstly, looking at some different utensils. I always like to start with adapting existing utensils first, if possible, instead of going out to buy something new. So with your existing utensils, you could get some foam grip or just wrap something grippy around it, like medical tape, rubber bands, things like that. The next is a universal cuff. So I have one here that I'm showing in the video. So it's essentially like a piece of fabric or Velcro that you can slide different objects into. So right now I have a plastic spoon in it, but you could also put a razor or a paintbrush or anything else that's hard to grasp. And then you just slide your hand through the strap there, and then use the utensil like you normally would. And then that way, if your hand gets tired or if you're shaking and you let go of it, it's not just going to fall off and drop to the ground. Some other DIY alternatives, you could use non-slip shelf liner. People have used pool noodles. If you have hair curlers, you could slide the sponge part off of that, as well as tennis balls or wine corks. Lots of different things that you might have at home could work for this purpose as well. Okay, the next step up of that would be looking at buying adaptive utensils. So firstly, looking for something with a bigger grip, such as this. And they come in sets, or you could buy individual utensils, just whatever you use most frequently. If you have a significant tremor that's affecting your ability to eat, then looking at weighted utensils. So this one is one of the nice ones, if you could see it in person, because I know you can't really see how much it weighs just by seeing me hold it. But if I hold these two together and I'm kind of using the same strength to hold them, you'll see this hand's quite a bit lower. It doesn't look like much, but it does weigh quite a bit. And that just helps to counteract the tremors, so that when you're bringing your spoon towards your mouth, that if your hand is shaking, because of the added weight, it's less likely to spill off of the spoon. And then lastly, I don't have one with me, but something that has a bendable angle. If you have trouble kind of angling the spoon towards your mouth, getting something that can bend. Some other things that can help are alternative utensils. So one example of that is a spork, so a combination spoon and fork, so that you're not having to switch utensils. You could possibly just use the spork for the whole meal. Another one is a soup spoon that you might often see in Asian restaurants that have a higher lip around them. So again, just to help prevent spilling, not only for soups, but even for things like cereal, or rice, or things that are easy to fall off of a spoon, I would recommend using a soup spoon for. And then lastly, there's lots of other specialized types of spoons that have been developed specifically for people with tremors, such as a sup spoon, or other spoons that have a cover on them. So that even if you tilt it, that the liquid or material is just going to go into the handle of the spoon instead of onto the floor. And then you can tilt it back to get it out. The next level up from that are stabilizing utensils. So there's the liftware, steady, and level, as well as the Guyano spoon, which detect how much and in what direction your hand is tremoring and counteracts it. So because these are electronic, they can be quite pricey, and they do need to be charged. So you would need to like either change a battery or plug it in to charge it, probably after each meal or every couple of meals. Another alternative to this is the Eli spoon. So this one is similar to the liftware, but it's not electronic. They actually use counterweights instead of the electronic mechanism. So this one is a little bit more affordable. So now switching to looking at dishes. One thing that can be helpful is a food guard. So this just clips onto any existing plate to provide an edge, to help prevent food from spilling off of the plate, and also gives you an edge to push the food onto your spoon or fork to get it off the plate. Partition dish can be helpful for that as well. Again, just because of tremor, if their food is mixing around a lot or falling off the plate, just helps keep it in place. And then the last one is a meal lifter, or you could also use a box or Tupperware, just something to raise your bowl or your plate to a higher surface so it's closer to your mouth, and then resting your elbow on the table and almost using it like a lever. Some people find it's helpful. Great. Next are different types of cups. So one is looking for mugs or cups with two handles, just to give some added stability. Looking at spill-proof mugs or tumblers that have a lid on them, especially if you're out in the community to bring with you. And the last one is the hand steady. So this one has a handle that actually rotates as you're moving it. So kind of like with the spoons, it detects where your hand is moving and counteracts it so that the liquid's not going to spill out. Right. A couple other things related to drinking. If you're having difficulty holding up a cup, straws can be really helpful, as well as for opening bottles and beverage openers. I forgot to write makers making change, but both of these are for makers making change as well. So one is for opening bottles and one is for opening pop cans. All right. Okay, so going into a slightly different but also related area for cooking. One thing that comes up a lot is chopping and peeling fruits and vegetables. So some things that can be helpful there are adaptive cutting boards. There's lots of different styles, but generally they have kind of three main features. Some type of spike to help keep round objects in place. So that could be like a cucumber or tomato or anything, just to secure it while you're cutting it. Many of them will have these edges on the side. So that's to help you get things off of the cutting board, or also to put a piece of bread to butter or to cut it. And then you can't see it, but on the bottom, they usually will have section cups as well. So that's just to keep it from moving as you're using it. The next device for cutting is a rocker knife. So a traditional knife, we're having to grip the knife quite tightly and saw back and forth, which can get really difficult as our grip strength weakens. So with a rocker knife, I'm showing one up in the video here, you're actually holding the handle at the top and you're using a rocking motion back and forth, kind of like a rocking chair. And this is much less strain on our hands. So some people who have trouble with a traditional knife find a rocker knife is easier to use. And then the last things on here, just for safety purposes, considering wearing cut-resistant gloves or finger guards just to protect your fingers. Some other devices there with chopping, using alternative methods of chopping. So one tool is called a clever cutter. It's kind of like scissors, but with a built-in cutting board. So you can see there, she's using it to cut celery, sausage, cheese. So you're not having to get a separate cutting board. It's kind of like a two-in-one device. Another option is using a mandolin or using a food processor. Or you could always buy things that are pre-chopped or frozen as well to kind of remove that need to have to chop up fruits and vegetables. For peeling things, looking for a vegetable peeler with an ergonomic handle. An alternative peeler, something called a palm peeler. So this one has a little hook on the back that you slide your finger through, and then you're using your whole hand to peel as opposed to having to grip the vegetable peeler. And then the last one on there is a clamp-on peeler. So this one's actually secured to a shelf or table, and then you're just using one hand or both hands to maneuver the fruit or vegetable you're trying to peel around it. And I think that comes up quite often is opening jars. So what I like to do first is put a rubber band around the lid. Sometimes that's enough just to give you that extra grip that you can open the jar. If that doesn't work, getting something with a bit more grip, so like a Dyson mat, or a lot of stores also sell jar openers. So you can put it on top of the lid to get extra grip, or it can also go underneath to hold the jar in place so that you can open with one hand. Then there's also various different styles of jar openers, both manual and electric ones that you can get at Amazon or really anywhere that you find kitchen stuff should have these as well. Similarly for opening cans, with manual can openers, just looking for something with an ergonomic handle. And if that's still difficult, then looking at moving to an electric can opener. There's two main styles for these. There's the battery operated ones, like the red one here, or there's ones that are plugged into the wall, like the Hamilton one shown on the right. But they both work similarly. They use magnets to clamp onto the top, and then you press the button, it cuts it for you. Right. Okay, our next category of adaptive aids is with writing. So firstly, looking at the pen or pencil that you're writing with can make a really big difference in both the legibility and speed of your writing, and also how comfortable your hand feels as you're writing, and consequently how long you're able to write for. So firstly, just starting with regular pens that you can buy at a stationery store, looking for ink that flows easily. So generally ballpoint or gel pens, and something with a nice rubber grip. So some examples here are the Pilot Dr. Grip, the Pentel Energel X, and the Uniball 207 are some that are often commonly recommended. And the next step up, if you either don't want to change out your pens or pencils, or if you don't want to be restricted to using certain ones, maybe looking at getting pen or pencil grips that you could use with various different utensils. Lots of different styles here. There's a triangle grip, there's a claw kind of grip, and then there's a universal ergonomic writing aid. So there's no grip that's necessarily best. It's trial and error, and every person's a little bit different. So if you're able to go to a store or come down to the Buchanan Center and try them out, I would really recommend trying out pencil grips before you go out to buy one. You can also make your own. So one of my favorite ways to do it is with a balloon. So I'll take a couple of deflated balloons and just wrap them around the pencil, and you can really customize how small or big you want that grip to be. And you can do the same thing with Coban wrap or rubber bands as well. This next slide here shows a variety of different pen and pencil grips that were developed by makers making change. So there's a ball grip, there's one that's kind of like a computer mouse, there's one that goes over your palm. So again, this is very individual, what's going to work best for each person, but these are some options they have there. For tremor, similar to with the eating utensils, sometimes adding a bit of weight. So that could be wearing a wrist weight or weighted glove, adding some weight to the pencil itself. So one way you can DIY that is with some hexagon nuts or something else heavy and just securing them with a rubber band. Or you can purchase weighted pens online as well. And then the last type of pen are specialized pens that have a different type of grip. These do take some time to get used to. Often when I have clients try them for the first time, they say it feels a little bit awkward. So you might want to give it a try for like a couple of days or a week to see if it's something that's going to be more comfortable for you over time. But they just offer a different way of gripping the pen. So instead of having a really tight grip on our 3 fingers, the index finger is kind of in the middle there, and that just helps relieve some of the pressure on the hand if that's an issue for you. So not only the type of pen we're using, the type of paper we use can make a big difference as well. So I always recommend that people use lined paper because this helps to provide visual cues to make sure that we're writing straight and keeping our letters at the correct letter height and width. Some people also find graph paper can be helpful. So if you find that your writing gets smaller and also gets kind of cramped together the more you write, graph paper can just help remind you to really space out those letters. So 1 letter per box. If you have trouble holding your paper still while you write, you could use a clipboard or that non-slip mat I showed you earlier to help keep the paper in place. And then the last thing here for writing is a signature guide. So these were made by makers making change as well. And they just have little boxes that fit the sizes on forms where you often have to write the date or sign your name. They purposely make them wallet size so you can carry them around with you. Say if you're at the bank or at a doctor's office and you have forms to fill out, then you can slip it out, place it over your page, and it just helps you to keep your writing at the right size. You can also make your own using a business card and just cutting out some slots in there. All right. This is our last category of things related to transportation and being out in the community. So getting in and out of the car is something that often becomes much more challenging, both with Parkinson's, but also just regular aging. So some tools that can help there is a portable grab bar. So these just hook into that little latch on the side of your door there and gives you something to hold on to as you're getting out of the car. So sometimes when there's nothing to hold on to, we'll kind of reach backwards, but that actually makes it harder to get out of the chair. So you want to have your hands in front of you. So you can have one on the grab bar and maybe one on your thigh or on the other side of the door frame. Another device is the car caddy. So this is a strap that just goes around the window frame there. And then the last device is a swivel cushion. So this is a cushion that has 2 parts to it. The bottom part is non-slip, so it doesn't move, and the top part rotates. So when you sit on it, it just makes it much easier to turn your legs so that you can get out of the car and also stay in when you're getting back in. Another low-cost option for the swivel cushion is just using a regular plastic grocery bag, just anything that helps to reduce the friction between your clothes and the chair. The seatbelt is another area where sometimes there can be difficulties. So using a seatbelt reacher, so this just clamps onto your seatbelt and gives you a handlebar, so you're not having to twist quite as much to reach the seatbelt. So it's kind of more in front of you here. And then Makers Making Change has a seatbelt release aid. So this is just kind of a plastic stick with a little box at the end that's shaped like the seatbelt button. And you can use it to push the button. Again, just reducing the amount of twisting you have to do. And the last item here is with keys. So Makers Making Change makes a key turner, or there's a commercial option as well called Key Wing. And that just gives you an easier grip on your keys. That could be your car keys or your house keys or any other types of keys that you might use. Okay, so just to quickly summarize, there's a wide range of adaptive aids available that can be helpful for people with Parkinson's, and there's more being developed all the time. Adaptive aids can really make the difference between being able to do something independently and needing assistance, or in the amount of time it takes you to require to do something. Remembering that using an adaptive aid is not a sign of weakness. The tools are to help improve your quality of life and help save your energy and efforts for other things that are maybe more important for you. And if you need any help selecting the right adaptive aid for you, talking to an occupational therapist, or just going to a store and trying out some of these products in person. Like I mentioned, we have a lot of these things available at the Buchanan Center as well. So you can always contact me or contact a client service coordinator, and we can arrange for you to come in to try out some of the adaptive aids we've talked about today. All right, that's all for today. Thank you everyone for your attention, and we'll just take any questions or comments now. We have about 10 minutes left, I think.
Thanks, Connie. There's one question here. Why is printing easier than writing?
So the reason for that is that when we're handwriting cursive, it's like one fluid motion. So we kind of lose track of where we're at. Whereas with printing, each letter is separate. So it kind of forces you to pause after like each letter or word and kind of check in with where your letter height is at. Is it getting smaller? Is it getting harder to read? It just forces you to slow down, basically.
Okay, thanks. The other question we had was some of the adaptive aids that you had that were from Makers Making Changes had specific names to it. So when you go online, do they kind of already have a category of other things they've made in the past so you can order the same, or do you always have to kind of make something new?
Yeah, so when you go onto Makers Making Change website, they have an assistive device library. I think there's over 100 items on there now, including all the ones that I put in the PowerPoint today. So you can search by keyword, or you can search by categories. For example, they have a category, I think one might be eating, there's one for like gaming, one for writing. So you can search that way. And if there's anything that you're needing an adaptive aid for and you don't see something on the library for that, you can always submit a project idea as well and see if there's a volunteer who can design something for you.
Okay, thank you. Another question, you mentioned a few times that folks can come to the Buchanan Center and check out the mobility aids in person. If they're not located in Edmonton, could they do this virtually with you instead?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Those were all the questions that I had, but maybe we'll give folks another minute in the chat and see if anything else comes through. Okay, I'm not seeing any more come through, so maybe we'll wrap up early for the last one here. So thank you again, Connie, for taking the time to join us for today's webinar. And thank you to everyone who was able to attend live and share your questions. One last little reminder, during Parkinson Awareness Month, so for the last week of this month, all donations to our organization will be matched dollar for dollar. Thank you to our good friend Roger Duteson and his generosity. So if you're interested in making a donation, you can go online at our website, parkinsonassociation.ca, or you can call our toll-free number, which I can put in the chat box, and do that over the phone. And right as I say that, I think there's one more comment in the chat. Any more aids for getting in and out of a chair?
So it would depend what type of chair. There are aids like specifically for sofas. There's the couch cane, I forgot what the other one's called, but kind of inserts between the sofa, like the mattress and the bottom of the sofa to give you handlebars. For dining chairs, there's Comfort Tech. So it goes on the bottom of a chair. It basically turns your chair into like a pivot chair so that you can more easily get in and out of the dining table. Or even just raising the seat height of a chair will often help. So if you can put like a firm cushion or something on there to get the chair at a higher height, that makes it easier to get in and out of as well. So it's very individual specific. I think it would depend on what type of chair and kind of where your physical abilities are at. So that's something that would be good to see an occupational therapist or even like a physical therapist about, and they can observe how you're getting in and out of your chair currently, and then provide specific recommendations to you.
Great. Thanks, Connie. Yeah, so much good information. There's so many adaptive tools out there. I think sometimes it's hard to know what a person needs or what's even out there to begin with. So this was definitely a good start. And if anyone else has other questions, feel free to reach out to your client service coordinator and we can get you connected to Connie and ask all your questions.